The late afternoon sun streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Diana Morrison's design studio, casting golden light across the fabric samples and architectural drawings spread across her desk. At 55, she'd built something she was proud of, a thriving interior design firm that specialized in luxury hotels and high-end residential projects. Her silver blonde hair was twisted into an elegant knot, and reading glasses perched on her nose as she studied the elevations for the Charleston Harbor Hotel renovation. Her phone buzzed and she smiled when she saw the name. Caroline Hartford. "Tell me you're calling to rescue me from choosing between 14 shades of cream," Diana said, answering. Caroline's warm laugh filled the line. "I'm calling to remind you about the Children's Arts Foundation Gala tomorrow night. Please tell me you haven't forgotten." Diana leaned back in her chair, pinching the bridge of her nose. "I was hoping you had." "Diana Morrison, you've been hiding in that studio for 3 months straight. You finished the Riverside project, you landed the Harbor Hotel contract, and you need to celebrate. Plus, I need my best friend there for moral support. You know how I hate these things without you. You organized the entire event. You don't need moral support. You need an audience to admire your brilliance. I need both. 7 o'clock, the Grand Charleston Hotel. Wear that sapphire dress I helped you buy last month, the one you claimed you'd never have an occasion to wear." Diana felt a familiar flutter of anxiety. These large charity events weren't her preference anymore. She'd spent years as a society wife attending them on someone's arm, playing the perfect accessory. Now she preferred the quiet satisfaction of her work, the occasional dinner with Caroline, and weekly phone calls with her son. "Carolyn." 7 o'clock, Diana. I'm not taking no for an answer. You're 55, not dead. You're allowed to have a life outside of fabric swatches and paint samples." After they hung up, Diana sat in the quiet of her studio, watching the sun sink lower over Charleston's historic district. She'd built a good life here. After leaving New York 25 years ago, she'd remade herself in this beautiful southern city. She had her business, her lovely renovated townhouse in the historic district, her garden, her friends, and most importantly, she had Ethan. Her son was her greatest achievement, though he'd argue his accomplishments were his own. At 24, he'd just completed his MBA from Columbia and landed an impressive position as an executive assistant to a CEO in New York. She was so proud of him, even if she worried about him being so far away. Diana's gaze drifted to the small photo on her desk. Ethan at his graduation, his blue eyes bright with accomplishment, his smile so genuine it made her heart ache. Those eyes. She saw them in the mirror sometimes, but they weren't hers. They were his father's eyes, James Hartford. Even after 25 years, the name could steal her breath. She'd loved him with the fierce intensity only a young woman could manage, had married him believing they'd build a life together. Instead, she'd watched him build an empire while she became another expensive acquisition in his collection. The townhouse, the country club membership, the art, the wife, all pieces of the perfect, successful life he was constructing. When she'd discovered she was pregnant 2 months after leaving him, she'd made a choice. James Hartford had wanted a dynasty, not a family. He'd wanted the appearance of domestic bliss, not the messy reality of parenting. She couldn't bring a child into that cold, hollow world. So she'd started over in Charleston, worked 3 jobs while pregnant, and built her design business one small project at a time while raising Ethan. She'd never regretted it. Ethan had grown into a remarkable man, intelligent, ambitious, but also kind and thoughtful. Everything his father wasn't. Diana shook her head, dismissing the old ghosts. She had work to finish. Tomorrow night she'd attend Caroline's gala, show her face, and then get back to her real life. The past was past, and that's where James Hartford belonged. Ethan Morrison adjusted his tie in the reflection of the glass wall overlooking Manhattan, then knocked on the double doors of the corner office. "Come in," came the deep voice. He entered to find James Hartford standing by the windows, phone to his ear, surveying his domain. At 57, the man was still imposing. Over 6 feet tall, salt and pepper hair perfectly styled, his custom suit emphasizing his athletic build. Those blue eyes were sharp and assessing as he glanced at Ethan, then motioned him to sit. Ethan took one of the leather chairs facing the massive desk, trying not to stare at the man he'd been watching for 2 months now. His father. The stranger who'd given him half his DNA and nothing else. James ended his call and turned his full attention to Ethan. The Singapore deal. Where are we? Wilson's team sent revised terms this morning. I've compiled the changes, cross-referenced them with our parameters, and flagged the 3 areas that need your decision. Ethan handed over the tablet with his analysis. James scrolled through, his expression unreadable. Ethan had learned to recognize the small signs. The slight nod meant approval. The tightening around his eyes meant he'd found an error or oversight. Right now, James was nodding. Good work. Send my response to these 3 points by end of day. Already drafted, sir. Just needed your approval. For the first time, James looked at him with something beyond professional assessment. You're efficient, Morrison. Where did you learn to anticipate like this? My mother, actually, Ethan said, keeping his voice casual. She built her business from scratch, watched her handle every aspect herself until she could afford to hire staff, she taught me to think 3 steps ahead. Smart woman. James set down the tablet. What does she do? Interior design, high-end commercial and residential. She's based in Charleston. Something flickered across James's face. Was it recognition? Pain, but it vanished before Ethan could identify it. The Charleston market is strong. She must be successful. She is. Everything she has, she earned herself. James studied him for a moment longer, and Ethan felt the weight of that gaze. Did his father see any resemblance? Did he notice the same blue eyes looking back at him? There's a charity gala tomorrow night in Charleston, James said abruptly. Children's Arts Foundation. I'm expected to attend. Hartford Global is a major sponsor. I'll need you to come along, handle any business contacts who want to discuss deals. Ethan's heart rate spiked. Charleston, tomorrow night. His mother had mentioned Caroline was organizing some big charity event. Surely it wasn't. Of course, sir. What time should I arrange travel? We'll fly down at 4, be there for the 7 o'clock start. You can fly back Sunday if you want to see your mother while we're in town. Thank you. I'd appreciate that. After leaving James's office, Ethan retreated to his own smaller workspace, his mind racing. He pulled out his phone and stared at his mother's contact information. He should call her, warn her. But warn her about what? That the man she'd loved and left 25 years ago would be at the same charity gala? That Ethan had orchestrated getting hired by Hartford Global specifically to understand his absent father before revealing the truth? He'd planned this carefully. After years of wondering about James Hartford, of seeing his mother's careful avoidance whenever his questions got too pointed, Ethan had done his own research. He'd learned about the empire his father had built, the ruthless business tactics, the workaholic reputation. He'd also learned that James had never remarried, never had other children, and by all accounts lived a solitary life despite his wealth and success. Ethan had wanted to understand why. Why had his father let his mother go? Why had he chosen business over family? And was there anything in the man worth knowing? So he'd applied to be James Hartford's executive assistant, using his newly minted Columbia MBA and some carefully cultivated recommendations. He'd been working for his father for 2 months now, watching him, learning his patterns. And what he'd learned was complicated. James was demanding but fair. He was brilliant in business but seemingly empty in his personal life. He arrived at the office at 6:30 every morning and rarely left before 8 at night. He had acquaintances, not friends. Business dinners, not social ones. And in his office, on the credenza behind his desk where most people kept family photos, James had a single framed photograph. Ethan had glimpsed it once during a late meeting. A young woman with blonde hair and a radiant smile standing on a beach somewhere, the wind catching her dress. He'd recognized her immediately, though she was decades younger in the photo. His mother. His father had kept a photo of the woman he'd divorced a quarter-century ago in his office. What did that mean? Ethan typed out a text to his mother. Looking forward to seeing you this weekend. I'll be in Charleston Saturday. Her response came quickly. Wonderful, darling. We'll have lunch. How's the new job? He stared at the message, then typed, It's everything I expected and more. Boss is interesting, complicated. Most successful people are. Don't forget to have a life outside of work, sweetheart. The irony of that advice, coming from a woman who'd buried herself in work for most of his childhood, made him smile. But he also understood it. His mother had needed work to survive, to build something for them both. She'd had no choice but to be single-minded about success. Had his father had a choice? Or had James Hartford become a workaholic for other reasons? Tomorrow night, at the gala, Ethan would find out. Because if his mother and father were both there, 25 years after their divorce, something was going to happen. And Ethan had no idea whether he was ready for it. Diana spent Saturday morning in her garden, trying to calm her nerves about the evening ahead. She'd slept poorly, plagued by dreams she couldn't quite remember, but that left her unsettled. Now, surrounded by the roses she'd carefully tended and the herbs she grew in terracotta pots, she sought the peace that usually came from working with her hands in the soil. "You're going to repot those basil plants to death," Caroline observed from the French doors leading to the patio. Diana looked up, startled. "I gave you that key for emergencies." "This is an emergency. You're spiraling." Caroline crossed the garden in elegant linen pants and a silk blouse, somehow managing to look effortlessly put together at 10 in the morning. At 52, James's younger sister had aged gracefully, her dark hair now shot through with silver that she wore proudly. She'd been Diana's best friend before becoming her sister-in-law, and had somehow remained her best friend after the divorce, maintaining a delicate balance of loyalty to both. "I'm not spiraling. I'm gardening." "You've been gardening since 6. I can see your kitchen light from my house, remember? You were up before dawn." Diana sat back on her heels, pushing her hair from her face and leaving a streak of soil on her cheek. These galas, they remind me of a life I don't live anymore." Carolyn settled onto the stone bench overlooking the garden. "They remind you of him." There was no point in pretending not to understand. "It's been 25 years, Caro. You'd think the scar tissue would be thick enough by now. Some wounds don't heal. They just become part of who we are." Carolyn was quiet for a moment. "He's different now, you know. My brother. Lonelier. More hollow somehow." Diana stood, brushing dirt from her gardening gloves. Don't what? Don't try to make me feel sympathy for James Hartford. He made his choices. He chose the empire over everything else. And you chose to leave without ever telling him about Ethan." The words hung between them, not accusatory, but simply true. Diana had known this conversation would come eventually. Caroline was one of 3 people who knew the truth about Ethan's paternity. Diana, Caroline, and as of his 18th birthday, Ethan himself. "I did what I thought was right," Diana said quietly. "James wanted the appearance of a family, not the messy reality. He wanted a wife who looked good at fundraisers and didn't ask why he worked 18-hour days. A child would have just been another possession to him, another piece of his perfect life portfolio. You don't know that. You didn't give him a chance to be a father." "Because I couldn't risk my child growing up feeling like I did, like an accessory, like something acquired and displayed but never truly seen or cherished." Diana pulled off her gloves, her hands trembling slightly. "Every day I wonder if I made the right choice. Every day I see Ethan's eyes, his father's eyes, and wonder what might have been different. But I can't regret raising my son in a home full of love, even if it was just the 2 of us." Caroline crossed to her, pulling her into a hug. "I know, sweetie, and Ethan is wonderful. You did a beautiful job raising him. But he's asking questions now, isn't he?" Diana nodded against her friend's shoulder. "He wants to understand his father. I can see it every time James Hartford's name comes up in the news. He researches, he reads, he analyzes. He's trying to figure out who half of himself is. Maybe it's time to let him. He's in New York now, same city as James. I worry every day he's going to just show up at Hartford Global and announce himself." Carolyn pulled back, holding Diana at arm's length. "Would that be so terrible?" "It would be ambush. Both of them deserve better than that." Diana shook her head. "If it's going to happen, it needs to happen right. They both need to be ready." "And you? Do you need to be ready?" "It doesn't matter what I need. This isn't about me." Caroline gave her a knowing look but didn't push further. Instead, she steered the conversation to safer ground. "Come inside. Let me see this sapphire dress, and we need to do something with your hair. If you're going to face your demons tonight, you should at least look stunning doing it." At 4 o'clock, Diana stood in front of her bedroom mirror, hardly recognizing herself. The sapphire dress Caroline had convinced her to buy fit perfectly, elegant and sophisticated without trying too hard. The deep blue brought out the color of her eyes and complemented her silver blonde hair, which Caroline had convinced her to wear down in soft waves instead of her usual practical twist. "You look beautiful," Caroline said from the doorway. "I look terrified." "That too, but beautiful." Caroline stepped into the room, stunning in burgundy silk. "Diana, I need to tell you something." The serious tone made Diana turn. "What?" "James is attending tonight. He's a major sponsor, and I couldn't not invite him." Diana felt the floor shift beneath her. "He's in New York. He wouldn't come all the way to Charleston he's already here, flew in this afternoon." The room suddenly felt too small, the air too thin. Diana sat on the edge of her bed, her hands gripping the mattress. "You should have warned me." "If I had, would you have come?" "No." "Exactly." Carolyn sat beside her. "Listen to me. You've been existing, not living, for 25 years. You've built a wonderful career. You've raised an incredible son, but you've been alone. By choice, yes, but alone nonetheless. Maybe it's time to face the past so you can finally move forward." "What if I don't want to move forward? What if I'm perfectly content where I am?" "Are you? Really?" Caroline's dark eyes, so like her brother's, searched Diana's face. "Because from where I sit, you're content the way a ship is content staying in harbor, safe, protected, but not fulfilling its purpose. That's poetic and annoying." "It's also true." Caroline stood, holding out her hand. "Come on, let's go to this gala. You'll make an appearance, support the cause, and if you happen to run into my brother, you can be gracious and distant, just like you've been for 25 years. Diana took her hand, let herself be pulled to her feet. She checked her reflection one more time, barely recognizing the elegant woman looking back. When had she started looking so mature? The thought made her smile slightly. She was 55. Mature was generous. But Caroline was right. She wore it well. "Okay," she said, reaching for her clutch. "Let's go face my demons. But if this goes badly, you're buying me a very expensive brunch tomorrow." "Deal. Though I have a feeling this might go differently than you expect." The Grand Charleston Hotel ballroom had been transformed into something magical. Thousands of tiny lights were strung across the ceiling like stars, while tall centerpieces of white flowers and trailing greenery created intimate spaces within the large room. A string quartet played in one corner, and waiters circulated with champagne and hors d'oeuvres. Diana entered beside Caroline, taking in the crowd of Charleston society mingling in their evening finest. She recognized most of the faces, business associates, former clients, friends of friends, safe territory. "There's the mayor," Caroline said. "I should go say hello. Will you be all right?" "I'm 55, not 5. Go. Work your hostess magic." Diana accepted a glass of champagne from a passing waiter and moved toward the windows overlooking the harbor. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. She could almost pretend she was somewhere else, at some other event, living some other life. And then she felt it, a shift in the air, an electric awareness that made her skin prickle. She turned slowly, knowing before she saw him what she would find. James Hartford stood across the room, beside a younger man Diana didn't recognize. He was in conversation with a couple, nodding politely, but his gaze had found her. Even across the crowded ballroom, even after 25 years, their eyes locked with the same intensity that had once made her believe in fate. He'd aged, of course. The dark hair was now liberally streaked with silver, and there were lines around his eyes that hadn't been there before. But he was still tall, still commanding, still able to steal the air from her lungs with a single look. Diana watched him excuse himself from his conversation and begin moving through the crowd toward her. She should flee. She should turn and disappear into the crowd. Instead, she stood frozen, watching him approach as if watching a storm roll in from the ocean, inevitable, powerful, and impossible to escape. "Hello, Diana," he said when he finally stood before her, his voice deeper than she remembered, roughened by time and perhaps whiskey. "James." Her voice came out steadier than she felt. "This is unexpected." "Is it? Caroline didn't mention I'd be here?" She may have forgotten to include that detail. His mouth quirked in something almost like a smile. My sister never forgets anything. I suspect we've been ambushed. I suspect you're right. Diana took a sip of her champagne, needing something to do with her hands. You look well. So do you, more than well. You look... He trailed off, his blue eyes traveling over her face as if memorizing it. You look exactly as I remember, and completely different all at once. 25 years will do that. Yes. He held her gaze. Yes, it will. They stood in awkward silence, the noise of the gala fading to background. Diana searched for something to say, some polite small talk to fill the space, but everything felt inadequate. I heard about your design firm, James finally said. Caroline keeps me updated whether I ask or not. She says you're very successful. I've been fortunate. I love what I do. That makes one of us. The words slipped out, and he looked surprised at himself for saying them. Before Diana could respond, the younger man who'd been with James appeared at his elbow. Mr. Hartford, they're announcing the sponsors. He stopped abruptly when he saw Diana, his face going pale. Diana's heart stopped. She knew those blue eyes. She knew that face, the shape of his jaw, the way he held himself. But it couldn't be. It was impossible. Ethan, she whispered. Her son stared back at her, and in that moment, Diana saw the truth written across his face. The new job in New York, the prestigious CEO position, the boss he'd called complicated. Oh, God. Oh, no. Mom, Ethan said weakly. James looked between them, confusion replacing his careful politeness. You two know each other? Diana couldn't breathe. This wasn't how it was supposed to happen. Not like this. Not all at once with no warning, no preparation, no time to explain. Mr. Hartford, Ethan said, his voice strained. I can explain. Your assistant, Diana interrupted, her eyes on James. Your executive assistant is Ethan Morrison. Yes, James said slowly. Morrison is one of my best hires. He's been with me for 2 months. Understanding began to dawn on his face. Morrison, your name. You said your mother was a designer in Charleston. Ethan looked miserable, caught between them. I was going to tell you both. I wanted to understand first. Understand what? James demanded, his voice sharpening. Diana set down her champagne glass before she dropped it. Her hands were shaking. Her entire body was shaking. Perhaps we should find somewhere private to discuss this. Discuss what? James's gaze moved from Diana to Ethan and back again, and she watched as the pieces fell into place. The timeline, the resemblance, the eyes. His face went completely white. How old are you? He asked Ethan. 24. Your birthday? August 15th. James did the math quickly, and Diana saw the exact moment he understood. The color drained from his face, then rushed back with fury. 24 years old, born 8 months after Diana left me. He turned to her, his eyes blazing. Is he mine? Diana lifted her chin, refusing to back down despite the trembling in her limbs. Yes. The single word detonated like a bomb. James staggered back a step, then another. People nearby were beginning to stare, sensing drama. Caroline appeared from nowhere, taking in the scene with dawning horror. We need to go somewhere private, Caroline said urgently. Now. Before this becomes tomorrow's headline. But James wasn't listening. He was staring at Ethan, really looking at him for the first time. Diana watched her son stand straight under his father's scrutiny, watched him meet those blue eyes with his own identical ones. You knew, James said to Ethan. You've known all along. You got yourself hired as my assistant. You've been working for me for 2 months, and you knew the entire time. Yes, sir. Don't call me sir. Don't. James broke off, running a hand through his hair. The gesture was so achingly familiar that Diana felt tears sting her eyes. She'd seen him do that 1,000 times when they were young, when something overwhelmed him. James, she said softly. He looked at her, and the devastation in his face cut her to the core. You kept my son from me. For 24 years, you kept my son from me. I made a choice. You made a choice, he repeated, his voice rising. You decided I didn't deserve to know. You decided for both of us, for all 3 of us. You were building an empire, not a life. You were never home, never present, never... never given over a chance. His voice cracked. You left me, and you were pregnant, and you never told me. You let me believe. He stopped, composing himself with visible effort. I need to leave. I can't. I need to not be here. He turned and strode through the crowd toward the exit. Ethan moved to follow, but Diana caught his arm. Let him go, she said quietly. Let him process. Mom, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean for it to happen like this. I wanted to tell you both, but the timing never seemed right, and then, it's all right, sweetheart. Diana pulled him into a hug, not caring who was watching. It's all right. We'll figure this out. But as she held her son and watched James's broad shoulders disappear through the ballroom doors, she wondered if that was true. Some things, once broken, couldn't be fixed, and she'd just shattered James Hartford's world with a truth 24 years in the making. Diana barely remembered the rest of the evening. She went through the motions, smiled at people, made appropriate comments, allowed Caroline to parade her around as if nothing catastrophic had just happened. But her mind was miles away, following James wherever he'd gone. Ethan stayed close, both of them avoiding the topic that hung between them like smoke. Finally, around 10, Diana made her excuses and ordered a car to take her home. I'll come with you, Ethan said. No, go back to your hotel. We'll talk tomorrow over lunch like we planned. Mom, please, Ethan, I need to think. He hugged her tightly, and she held on perhaps longer than necessary, remembering when he was small enough to fit completely in her arms. Now he towered over her, this man she'd raised alone, this stranger's son who'd become the center of her world. The drive home was a blur. Diana let herself into her quiet townhouse, kicked off her heels, and poured herself a generous glass of wine. She stood in her living room, still in the sapphire dress, looking at the framed photos on her mantel. Ethan at every age, his first day of school, his high school graduation, his college acceptance letter, which he'd insisted she frame, his Columbia MBA diploma ceremony, a life documented in photographs, a life James knew nothing about. Had she been wrong? The question had haunted her for 24 years, but never as intensely as tonight. Had she stolen something irreplaceable from both of them, from all three of them? She'd believed she was protecting Ethan. James had been consumed by his business, driven to build his empire. There'd been no room for a real family in that life, only the appearance of one. She'd been lonely in her marriage, a trophy to be displayed. She couldn't bring a child into that cold world. But what if she'd been wrong? What if James would have changed given the chance? What if knowing about Ethan would have made him into a different man? Diana sank onto her sofa, the wine forgotten in her hand. The look on James's face, the devastation, the betrayal, the grief for something lost that he'd never known he'd had, that would haunt her forever. Her phone buzzed. Caroline. Are you all right? Her friend asked without preamble. No, are you? I've been better. James left for New York an hour ago, took the company jet and didn't say a word to anyone. Diana closed her eyes. I didn't mean for this to happen. I know. But Diana, maybe it needed to. Maybe 24 years of secrets was long enough. He hates me. He's hurt. There's a difference, Caroline sighed. Look, I'm not defending what you did or what James did or any of it. You were both young and stupid and made choices. But Ethan is the consequence and the blessing of those choices. And that boy, man, deserves to have a father if his father is willing to step up. What if James isn't willing? What if he can't forgive me? Then you'll deal with it. But Diana, I saw James's face tonight. Under the anger and hurt, there was something else. Longing. He's spent 25 years alone because he lost you. What do you think he'll do now that he knows he has a son? After they hung up, Diana sat in the darkness of her living room and let herself cry for the first time in years. She cried for the girl she'd been, who'd loved a man so completely and been so invisible to him. She cried for the choice she'd made, right or wrong. She cried for Ethan, caught in the middle of his parents' complicated history. And she cried for James, learning in the cruelest way possible that he'd missed 24 years of his son's life. When the tears finally stopped, Diana felt hollowed out but clearer somehow. Whatever happened next, the truth was out. No more secrets, no more careful avoidance. They would have to find a way forward, all three of them. She just hoped they could do it without destroying each other in the process. Sunday morning arrived too bright and too early. Diana had slept fitfully, her dreams full of blue eyes and accusations. She dragged herself from bed, made coffee, and was in her garden again by 7, her refuge, her therapy. She was repotting the basil again when she heard footsteps on the path. Ethan emerged from the house looking as tired as she felt. He was in jeans and a Columbia sweatshirt, his dark hair messy, and she was struck by how young he looked despite being a grown man with an MBA and a prestigious job. "Morning, sweetheart," she said, setting down her trowel. "Morning." He sank onto the stone bench. "I tried calling him. He's not answering." Diana wiped her hands on her gardening apron and joined him on the bench. "Give him time. This is a lot to process. I handled it all wrong. I should have told you both immediately. I shouldn't have taken the job without being honest about who I was." "Why did you?" Diana asked gently. "Take the job, I mean. What were you hoping to find?" Ethan was quiet for a long moment, staring at the roses. "I wanted to understand him. My whole life I've known I had a father out there somewhere, but you never talked about him. Oh, you answered my questions. Basic facts, no emotion. It was like reading a Wikipedia entry about a stranger. And I could see it hurt you to talk about him, so I stopped asking, but I never stopped wondering. I'm sorry I couldn't give you more. No, I get why. I do. But Mom..." He turned to look at her, his blue eyes, James's eyes, searching her face. "I'm 24. I've got half my DNA from a man I don't know. And when I started researching him, learning about Hartford Global and the business empire and all of it, I wanted to see who he really was, not the public persona, but the man. So I applied for the job." "And what did you find?" Ethan smiled sadly. "A man who works 18-hour days and has a photo of you in his office from 25 years ago. A man who's brilliant in business but seems completely alone in life. A man who I think has been punishing himself for losing you by refusing to have anything else." Diana's breath caught. "He has my photo." "On the credenza behind his desk. You're on a beach somewhere, the wind in your hair, smiling like you're the happiest person alive. I've never seen you look like that." The memory surfaced. Their honeymoon in Greece, when she'd still believed their love could conquer anything. James had surprised her with a sunrise photo shoot on a private beach, just the two of them, and a photographer he'd hired. She'd been so happy that day, so full of hope. "That was a long time ago," she said quietly. "But he kept it. For 25 years, he kept it in his office where he sees it every day." Ethan took her hand. "I think he still loves you, Mom. I think he's always loved you. Love isn't enough sometimes. We wanted different things. I wanted a partnership, a real marriage. He wanted success and the appearance of having it all. People change. You changed. You built an entire career, became this strong, independent woman. Maybe he changed too. Or maybe seeing me last night just brought back old pain." Diana squeezed his hand. "Sweetheart, I appreciate what you're trying to do, but your father and that's over. It's been over for 25 years. What matters now is your relationship with him. If he's willing, if he wants to know you, then I'll support that completely." "And if he wants to know you again?" Diana stood, unable to sit still any longer. "Then we'll cross that bridge if we come to it. But Ethan, don't get your hopes up about some fairy tale reunion. Life isn't a romance novel. Sometimes things end and stay ended. But sometimes they don't." Ethan rose and kissed her cheek. "I'm going to head back to New York this afternoon. Try to talk to him in person tomorrow. Be patient with him. He's hurting." "I will, but Mom, you're hurting too. I've watched you for 24 years build this safe, careful life, and it's a good life. But it's like you're holding your breath waiting for something. Maybe last night was that something." After he left, Diana stood in her garden and let herself remember. Not the end, not the loneliness and hurt, but the beginning. The way James had looked at her across a crowded art gallery opening and somehow made her feel like the only person in the world. The way he'd courted her with intensity and focus, as if winning her heart was the most important deal he'd ever closed. The way he'd whispered, "I love you" on their wedding night and made her believe in forever. She'd loved him so much it had terrified her. And when that love hadn't been enough to keep him present, to make him choose her over the empire he was building, it had broken something inside her she'd never quite repaired. Could she risk that kind of hurt again? Even if Ethan was right, even if James had changed, could she open herself up to that vulnerability? Diana shook her head, dismissing the dangerous thoughts. Last night had been a shock, a disruption. In a few days, everything would settle back into place. James would focus on getting to know Ethan, she would continue with her work. They would find a way to coexist as Ethan's parents without dredging up the past. It was the only sensible plan. So why did it feel like she was lying to herself? Chapter 2. Monday morning in Manhattan arrived cold and gray, matching James Hartford's mood. He had spent the entire day Sunday in his penthouse, ignoring calls, ignoring emails, ignoring everything except the bottle of expensive scotch and the anger churning in his gut. A son. He had a son. 24 years old, brilliant, ambitious, working for him for 2 months, and he'd never known, never suspected. How had he missed it? The eyes alone should have told him. Those were Hartford eyes, the same blue his father had, the same blue he saw in the mirror every morning. But he'd been blind. Deliberately, perhaps, because looking too closely at Ethan Morrison would have meant seeing Diana in him too. The thoughtful intelligence, the careful observation, the quiet competence. His son was a perfect blend of both of them, and James had been too caught up in his own isolation to notice. The anger had faded somewhere around 3 in the morning, replaced by something harder to bear. Grief. He'd missed 24 years, first steps, first words, first day of school, baseball games, science fairs, graduation, everything a father should witness, should be part of, and he'd known nothing, been nothing. Diana had stolen that from him, except, had she? The Scotch-induced honesty had forced him to face uncomfortable truths. What kind of father would he have been 24 years ago? He'd been obsessed with building Hartford Global, working 100-hour weeks, measuring his worth by his bank account and his expanding empire. Would he have been present for a child? Or would the baby have been another item on Diana's to-do list while he worked late at the office? The memory of their marriage made him wince. He'd been so young, so arrogant, so certain that providing luxury was the same as providing love. Diana had tried to tell him she was lonely. He'd bought her a bigger townhouse. She'd asked him to come home for dinner. He'd sent flowers and worked until midnight. She'd needed a partner. He'd given her a credit card with no limit. And she'd left. He'd told himself she was weak, couldn't handle the demands of being with a driven man. He'd told himself she wanted something he couldn't be. He'd told himself a lot of lies over the years. But in the darkness of his penthouse at 3 in the morning, he'd finally admitted the truth. He'd lost the best thing that ever happened to him because he'd been too stupid to recognize it until it was gone. Now, Monday morning in his office, James stared at the photograph on his credenza. Diana on that beach in Greece when they'd still been happy, when she'd still looked at him like he hung the moon. He'd kept this photo for 25 years, taken it with him through 3 different office moves, looked at it every single day and pretended it didn't represent everything he'd lost through his own failings. His intercom buzzed. "Mr. Hartford, Ethan Morrison is here to see you." James closed his eyes. He wasn't ready for this conversation, might never be ready, but it had to happen. "Send him in." Ethan entered looking nervous but determined, his briefcase in hand. He stopped just inside the door, not approaching the desk. "I have my resignation letter," Ethan said without preamble. "Effective immediately if you prefer, or I can work out 2 weeks' notice. I understand this situation is untenable." "Sit down," James said quietly. "Sir." "Sit down, Ethan, please." Ethan settled into one of the chairs, perching on the edge as if ready to flee. James studied him openly now, seeing everything he'd been blind to before. The shape of his face was Diana's, softer somehow, but the eyes, the build, the way he held himself, all Hartford. "Tell me about your childhood," James said. Ethan blinked, clearly surprised. That's not what I came to discuss." "Humor me. I've missed 24 years. Give me something." A long pause. Then Ethan began slowly. "We lived in Charleston. A small apartment at first, then Mom bought a townhouse when I was 8. She worked constantly when I was young. I spent a lot of time with babysitters or at Caroline's house, but she was always there for the important stuff. School events, my soccer games, teaching me to cook. We were a team, just the 2 of us." Did she date? Remarry?" "No, never. I asked her about it once when I was a teenager. She said she'd had her great love and didn't need another one." Ethan met his gaze. "I think she meant you." James felt something crack inside his chest. She said that? Not in those words, but it was implied. She's been alone by choice, Mr. Hartford. She built her career, raised me, made a life for herself. But she's been alone in it except for me. Stop calling me Mr. Hartford. I don't know what you should call me, but not that. What would you like me to call you? I don't know. James ran a hand through his hair. That gesture again, the one he couldn't seem to stop when overwhelmed. I have a son. I'm someone's father. And I have no idea how to be that. You've been my boss for 2 months. You've been fair, tough, but reasonable, willing to teach. That's a start. I've been your employer, not your father. There's a difference. Then let's start there. Get to know each other as employer and employee first. Let the rest evolve. James wanted to argue, but he recognized the wisdom in it. They were strangers, despite biology. Building a relationship would take time, trust, and something he'd never been good at, patience. You're not fired, he said finally. Your resignation is rejected. You're still my executive assistant if you want to be. Relief flooded Ethan's face. I do. Thank you. But we need ground rules. At work, we're professional. After hours, we figure out the rest. Can you handle that? Yes, sir. Yes, I can handle that. They sat in awkward silence for a moment. Then Ethan pulled out his tablet. The Singapore deal closed. They accepted your terms. Contracts should be finalized by Wednesday. And just like that, they were back in familiar territory. Business, deals, the safe language of work they both understood. But something had shifted. James found himself watching Ethan differently now, seeing not just an efficient assistant, but a young man he'd helped create. His son. The thought still stole his breath. The week crawled by in a strange new reality. At work, James and Ethan maintained professional distance, but there were moments, small ones, where the facade cracked. James found himself telling stories about Hartford Global's early days, and Ethan listened with genuine interest, asking questions that showed he understood the business on a deeper level than James had realized. On Wednesday evening, after most of the staff had left, Ethan knocked on James's office door with 2 containers of Chinese food. Thought you might be hungry, he said. You've been here since 6 this morning. They ate in James's office, and for the first time, conversation drifted beyond business. Ethan talked about Colombia, his thesis on emerging markets, his plans for eventually starting his own venture. James found himself genuinely interested, asking questions, offering advice. You have good instincts, James said. You could go far in this business. I learned from the best. Mom always said if you're going to do something, commit fully or don't do it at all. She said that constantly. It was her mantra when building her design firm. She'd take on projects other people rejected as too difficult or too complex, and she'd make them shine. Ethan smiled. Her clients love her. She makes spaces that feel like home, even in luxury hotels. It's a gift. James realized how little he knew about Diana's life after their divorce. He'd deliberately avoided information about her, the pain of losing her too raw. Now he wanted to know everything. Is she happy? He asked quietly. Ethan considered the question carefully. She's content. She has her work, her friends, her garden. But happy? I think she's been in holding pattern for a long time, like she's waiting for something to change but doesn't know what. She must hate me. She doesn't hate you. Ethan struggled for words. She's protective of me, of herself, of the life we built, and I think she's scared. Of what? Of you. Of what you represent. Of the fact that you could disrupt everything she's carefully constructed. Ethan met his gaze. She loved you completely once. I think that kind of love doesn't just disappear. It transforms into something else. Protection, maybe, or fear. James thought about the way Diana had looked at him at the gala. The shock, yes, but beneath that, longing, pain. He'd been too angry to analyze it properly. Now he replayed every second of their encounter, searching for clues. I kept your photo, he said abruptly. That one. He nodded toward the credenza. For 25 years, I've looked at it every day. Ethan's expression softened. I know. I noticed the first week I worked here. That's when I knew you weren't the cold, heartless businessman the media makes you out to be. You're just a man who lost something and never got over it. The observation was too accurate, too close to truths James had avoided for decades. He changed the subject, and they finished their meal talking about safer things: sports, New York restaurants, books they'd both read. But later, alone in his penthouse, James couldn't stop thinking about Diana. Not the Diana he'd been married to, young, idealistic, gradually fading under the weight of his neglect. No, he thought about the woman he'd seen at the gala, mature, confident, beautiful in a way that transcended youth. She'd built a life, raised their son, become someone remarkable. And he'd lost her. The thought was unbearable. Friday afternoon, Caroline called. James had been avoiding her all week, but she was persistent. "You can't ignore me forever," she said when he finally answered. "I can try." "James Hartford, stop sulking and listen to me. Diana didn't keep Ethan from you out of malice. She did it because she was terrified and alone and making the best choice she could with the information she had. She should have told me." "Yes?" "She should have. And you should have been a better husband. We can litigate who wronged whom until we're both dead, or you can decide what you want to do now, in the present, with the hand you've actually been dealt." "I don't know what I want." "Liar. You've known what you want for 25 years. You just didn't think you could have it anymore." James was quiet, unable to deny it. "She's in New York," Caroline said softly. "What?" "Diana. She flew up this morning for a client meeting Monday. She's staying at the Carlisle through the weekend." "Carolyn, I'm not telling you what to do. I'm just providing information. What you do with it is your choice." She paused. "But James, you've been alone long enough. You've punished yourself long enough. Maybe it's time to fight for what you want instead of just grieving for what you lost." After she hung up, James sat in his office and stared at nothing. Diana was in New York, 5 miles away, maybe less. After a week of her haunting his every thought, she was here, in his city. He looked at the photo on his credenza, Diana laughing on that Greek beach, joy radiating from every pixel. Then he looked at his watch. 6:30 on a Friday evening. Before he could talk himself out of it, he grabbed his jacket and left the office. Diana stood at the window of her hotel room at the Carlisle, looking out over Central Park as the sun set. She'd come to New York for Monday's client presentation, but she'd also come because she couldn't stand being in Charleston anymore, wondering what was happening between James and Ethan, imagining conversations she wasn't part of, changes she couldn't see. Ethan had called her every day this week, giving her careful updates. They were talking, getting to know each other. It was awkward but not hostile. James had accepted Ethan as his son, wanted to build a relationship, and Diana. She existed in the margins of these updates, the woman who'd caused this situation, the mother who'd made choices, present in absence. She'd thought about calling James 100 times this week. She'd drafted texts and deleted them. She'd even gotten as far as the lobby of Hartford Tower before losing her nerve and returning to her hotel. What would she even say? "I'm sorry. I was wrong. I did what I thought was best." All of it felt inadequate. Her phone rang. Caroline, of course. "How's New York?" her friend asked. "Overwhelming. I'd forgotten how intense this city is." "Have you seen him?" "No, and I'm not going to. Ethan says they're building a relationship. That's what matters." "What about your relationship with him?" "We don't have one. We haven't had one for 25 years. You had one for 45 seconds at the gala before everything exploded. I saw the way you looked at each other. That kind of connection doesn't just disappear." Diana closed her eyes, leaning her forehead against the cool glass. "It wasn't enough before. Why would it be enough now?" "Because you're both different people. Because you've lived enough life to understand what matters. Because—" Caroline stopped. "Someone's at my door. Hold on." Diana waited, watching the lights begin to glow in the park below. She heard Caroline's muffled voice, then a familiar, deeper voice that made her heart stop. "Diana," Caroline came back on the line. "James is here. He's asking where you're staying." "Don't tell him." "Too late. I already did." Caroline! Someone has to force you two to actually talk instead of just existing in misery. You're welcome." She hung up before Diana could protest further. Diana stared at her phone, then at her reflection in the darkening window. She was in jeans and a soft sweater, her hair loose, no makeup beyond mascara. Not prepared for James Hartford, not prepared for any of this. But 20 minutes later, there was a knock on her hotel room door. She knew who it would be. Could have not answered. Should have not answered. But she walked to the door and opened it anyway, because some gravitational forces were impossible to resist. James stood in the hallway, still in his work clothes, his tie loosened, his hair slightly mussed as if he'd been running his hands through it. Those blue eyes, Ethan's eyes, locked onto hers with an intensity that stole her breath. "We need to talk," he said. Diana stepped back wordlessly, letting him enter. He moved past her into the elegant hotel room, and suddenly the space felt too small, too intimate. She'd stayed in thousands of hotel rooms during her career. None had ever felt this charged. "Would you like a drink?" she asked, needing something to do with her hands. "The minibar is ridiculously expensive, but I don't want a drink." James turned to face her, and the raw emotion in his expression made her step back. "I want answers. I want to understand. Diana, you kept my son from me for 24 years. I need to know why." She'd known this conversation was coming, had rehearsed various versions of it in her mind, but now, faced with him, all her prepared speeches evaporated. "You were never there," she said quietly. "Even when you were physically present, you were somewhere else. The business, the next deal, the empire you were building. There was no room for me in your life, James. How could I bring a child into that? You could have given me a chance. I gave you chances. I told you I was lonely. I told you I needed more from you, and you'd promised to try, to be better, and then there'd be another acquisition, another crisis, another 18-hour day." Her voice broke. "I loved you so much it hurt, and I became invisible to you anyway." "You were never invisible." James moved closer, and she held her ground despite the instinct to flee. "You were everything. You were the reason I was working so hard, building something that could give you everything you deserved. I didn't need everything. I needed you. I didn't know how to give you that. I didn't know how to be anything other than what I was, driven, focused, ambitious. My father taught me that success was the only thing that mattered. Providing for your family meant giving them financial security, luxury, status. I thought that's what love looked like." Diana shook her head. "Love looks like showing up, like being present, like choosing your partner over your next deal." "I know that now." James's voice was rough with emotion. "I've known it for 25 years. Every single day since you left, I've known it. But I didn't know it then, when it mattered, when you needed me to know it." They stood facing each other, years of hurt and regret hanging between them like smoke. Diana wanted to reach for him, wanted to run, wanted to cry, wanted to scream, wanted to kiss him until neither of them could remember why they'd ever been apart. "I should have told you about Ethan," she said finally. "Maybe not right away when I was scared and pregnant and alone, but later, when he was older. When you'd—" she trailed off. "When I'd what?" "When you'd become someone who might actually want to be a father instead of just adding parent to your list of accomplishments." The words were harsh, but James didn't flinch. "Fair, that's fair. But Diana, you don't know what I would have been. You didn't give me the chance to surprise you." "Would you have? Surprised me?" He was quiet for a long moment. "I don't know. Honestly, I don't know. Maybe I would have kept being the workaholic asshole I was, or maybe having a child would have changed me. We'll never know now." Diana sank onto the edge of the bed, suddenly exhausted. "I did what I thought was right. Maybe I was wrong. Probably I was wrong. But Ethan, James, he's remarkable. He's kind and brilliant and ambitious, but in a healthy way. He's everything I could have hoped for. You did a beautiful job raising him." James sat in the armchair across from her, maintaining distance. "Ethan talks about you constantly. How hard you worked, how you were always there for him, how you taught him to be a good person first and successful second. You gave him something I never could have, a childhood full of love. You could have given him that too, if you'd been there. Maybe, we'll never know." James leaned forward, his elbows on his knees. "So where do we go from here? Ethan wants a relationship with me. I want that too. But you and I, Diana, how do we navigate this? Carefully, separately. You build a relationship with your son. I stay in Charleston. We communicate when necessary for Ethan's sake. Is that what you want?" The question hung in the air. Diana knew the safe answer, the answer that would protect her heart, maintain the walls she'd built over 25 years. But looking at James, really looking at him, she saw something she'd never expected. Loneliness. The same loneliness she'd been carrying for decades. "I don't know what I want," she admitted. "I spent 25 years building a life without you. I taught myself not to miss you, not to wonder, not to hope. And then I saw you at the gala, and all of it came flooding back like no time had passed at all." "I never stopped loving you," James said quietly. "I've told myself I had, that I'd moved on, that the past was past. But seeing you again, Diana, you're even more beautiful now than you were then. More confident, more yourself. And I realized I've been in love with a memory for 25 years, but the reality is even better." Diana's heart hammered against her ribs. "James, I'm not asking for anything. I'm just telling you the truth. You deserve that much from me, at least." They sat in the fading light, the room growing darker around them. Outside, the sounds of the city hummed. Traffic, sirens, life happening. Inside this room, time felt suspended. "I saw your photo," Diana said softly. "Ethan told me that you kept it in your office all these years. Every day, I looked at it every day and remembered what it felt like to be loved by you. You were loved by me. Even at the end, I loved you. That's why leaving hurt so much. If I could go back, we can't go back. That's not how time works." Diana stood, needing movement. She crossed to the window, putting distance between them. "We can only go forward, and I don't know how to do that when looking at you makes me feel 25 years old again." She heard him rise, felt him move closer, not touching, but close enough that she could feel his presence like heat. "What if we tried?" he asked. "Tried what?" "To see if what we had is still there. If we could be different this time. Better." Diana turned to face him, and the longing in his eyes nearly undid her. "I'm terrified. So am I. We'd probably just hurt each other again. Probably. We're both stubborn and set in our ways. Definitely. And we have 25 years of baggage. Mountains of it." James reached out slowly, giving her time to move away. When she didn't, he cupped her face in his hands. "But Diana, what if we could have it all? The second chance people almost never get. What if we could do it right this time? I don't know if I remember how to be loved by you. Then let me remind you." He kissed her, softly at first, questioning, giving her every chance to pull away. But Diana couldn't move, couldn't breathe, couldn't do anything but feel. His lips on hers, familiar and strange all at once. His hands cradling her face with a tenderness that made her ache. The way her body remembered this, remembered him, despite the years between. When he deepened the kiss, Diana surrendered to it. Her hands came up to his chest, feeling his heart pounding as hard as hers. His arms wrapped around her, pulling her close, and she fit against him the way she always had, perfectly, like two pieces of a puzzle finally reconnecting. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Diana pressed her forehead against his. "This is a terrible idea," she whispered. "The worst," he agreed. "We should be sensible, take time, move slowly." "Absolutely." But neither of them moved away. They stood in the darkening hotel room, holding each other, and Diana felt something she hadn't felt in 25 years. Hope. And hope, she was discovering, was the most dangerous feeling of all. Chapter 3. They stood holding each other in the dimming light, neither willing to break the spell. Finally, James pulled back, slightly, his hands sliding down to rest on her waist. "Have dinner with me," he said. "James, just dinner. We'll go somewhere quiet, talk, figure out what this is." Diana knew she should say no, should create distance, think rationally, protect herself. Instead, she heard herself say, "Let me change. I'm not going anywhere in jeans." "You look beautiful in jeans." "Flatterer, give me 20 minutes. He reluctantly released her and moved to the window while she retreated to the bathroom with her garment bag. Diana stared at her reflection in the mirror, her lips still swollen from his kiss, her eyes bright. She looked more alive than she had in years. "You're making a mistake," she told her reflection. But she pulled out a burgundy dress anyway, touched up her makeup, and let her hair fall in soft waves around her shoulders. When she emerged, James had his back to her, hands in his pockets as he looked out over the park. The sight of him silhouetted against the city lights made her breath catch. He'd always been handsome, but age had refined him, given him a gravitas that youth had lacked. He turned when he heard her, and the expression on his face, hunger mixed with tenderness, made her feel like that 25-year-old bride again. "Worth the wait," he said softly. They took his car to a small Italian restaurant in the West Village, tucked away from the glitz of more fashionable neighborhoods. The owner greeted James by name, led them to a corner table that offered privacy, and Diana realized that he must come here often. "This is your place," she observed once they were seated. "One of them. I don't cook much, so I have a rotation of restaurants where they know me and leave me alone. This is the best of them. You used to love cooking. Those Sunday morning breakfasts. I remember." His eyes darkened with memory. "I haven't cooked breakfast for anyone in 25 years. The words hung between them, weighted with meaning. The waiter appeared with wine, took their orders, and disappeared. Diana sipped her Chianti, trying to find equilibrium. "Tell me about your life," James said. "Not the outline. Ethan gives me that. The details. What makes you happy? What do you do on Sunday mornings now?" "I garden. I've built this little sanctuary in my backyard. Roses, herbs, vegetables. There's something meditative about working with my hands in the soil, watching things grow. You hated gardening when we were married. I hated the idea of hiring someone to make everything perfect. Now I like the imperfection, the fact that some things thrive and some don't, and I'm learning as I go." James smiled. "So you became someone who embraces imperfection. That's a change." "I had to. Raising a child alone means nothing goes according to plan. You learn to adapt, to find joy in the chaos." Diana met his eyes. "What about you? What do you do when you're not working?" "Work more, usually." He looked slightly embarrassed. "I run every morning, 6 miles, through Central Park before the city wakes up. It helps me think, and I read. Business books, some fiction. I go to the occasional museum or concert Caroline drags me to. And I work." "You're still the same then?" "In some ways, in others." He reached across the table, his fingers finding hers. "I'm lonelier now. I see it more clearly. Before, with you, I didn't realize what I had until it was gone. Now I know exactly what I'm missing." Their food arrived, giving Diana a moment to compose herself. His touch sent electricity through her, familiar and thrilling. She should pull away, should maintain distance, but her hands stayed in his, their fingers intertwining as if they'd never been apart. They talked through dinner, carefully at first, then with increasing ease. He told her about building Hartford Global from a regional player to an international powerhouse. She told him about landing her first major hotel contract, how terrified she'd been, how Carolyn had helped her prepare. "My sister has always believed in you," James said. "She's been my lifeline. When Ethan was born, she was there. She's kept me connected to your family, even after everything. She never told me about Ethan. All these years, she knew, and she never said a word. I made her promise. It wasn't fair to her, putting her in that position, but I needed one person who knew the truth, who could help if something happened to me." James's grip on her hand tightened. "What would have happened to Ethan if something had happened to you? Caroline would have raised him, and eventually she would have told you. That was our agreement. In an emergency, you'd know. But only then. I don't know whether to be grateful for that or furious. Both. You're allowed both." After dinner, they walked through the village, the spring air cool but not cold. James kept her hand in his, and Diana didn't pull away. They window shopped, talked about nothing important, laughed at a street performer's terrible magic tricks. It felt like dating, like courtship, like the early days when everything had been easy between them. They ended up on a bench in Washington Square Park, watching students and artists and the eternal flow of New York life. James draped his arm across the back of the bench, not quite touching her, but close enough that Diana felt surrounded by him. "I've imagined this so many times," he said quietly, "being with you again. In my mind, I had the perfect things to say, the perfect way to make you understand how much I regret everything. But now that you're here, all I can think is how much I've missed you, how empty my life has been without you in it." Diana turned to him, studying his face in the lamplight. "What are you asking for, James?" "A chance. To do it right this time. To be the man I should have been 25 years ago. We can't recapture the past. I don't want the past. I want the future. With you, with Ethan. with the family I didn't know I'd lost. It's not that simple. It could be, if we let it. His hand came up to cup her cheek, his thumb stroking her skin with infinite gentleness. I'm not asking you to move in tomorrow or marry me next week. I'm asking for time, to see if what we had is still there, to see if we can build something better, stronger than what we had before. Diana closed her eyes, leaning into his touch. Every rational part of her screamed that this was dangerous, that she'd be devastated when it ended, that some broken things couldn't be repaired. But her heart, her foolish, hopeful heart, wanted to believe. I'm scared, she whispered. So am I. She opened her eyes, met his gaze. If we do this, if we try, you have to promise me something. Anything. Don't make promises you can't keep. Don't tell me you've changed if you're still going to choose work over everything else. Don't pretend to want a partnership if what you really want is someone to fit into your life on your terms. Because I won't do that again, James. I can't. I'm not the same man I was. I've had 25 years to regret every choice I made with you, to understand what I lost, to become someone who could maybe, possibly deserve you. You don't have to deserve me. You just have to see me, really see me, not some idea of who you want me to be. I see you, Diana. I see a woman who built an empire of her own while raising our son alone. I see strength and grace and beauty that goes so much deeper than what's on the surface. I see the woman I fell in love with, grown into someone even more remarkable than I could have imagined. He leaned closer, his breath warm against her lips. I see you, and I'm asking you to give me a chance to prove it. She should think about this, should make a list of pros and cons, analyze the risks, protect herself. But when James kissed her again, soft and seeking and full of promise, Diana stopped thinking altogether. This kiss was different from the one in the hotel room, slower, deeper, more certain. His hand slid into her hair, angling her head to deepen the connection. Her hands found his chest, feeling his heart racing beneath her palms. They kissed like teenagers on a park bench, oblivious to the city around them, lost in each other. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, James rested his forehead against hers. Come back to my place, he said, just to talk. I'm not asking for, I just don't want this night to end yet. Diana knew she should say no, should go back to her hotel room, think clearly, be sensible. But she heard herself say, okay. James's penthouse occupied the top 2 floors of a building overlooking Central Park. The elevator opened directly into his space, all glass and steel and masculine elegance. Diana moved through the living room, taking in the modern furniture, the expensive art, the floor-to-ceiling windows showcasing the glittering city below. It's beautiful, she said. It's empty. James shrugged out of his jacket, tossing it over a chair. I hired a decorator. Told her to make it look good. She did. But it's never felt like home. Why not? Because home is supposed to have people in it, love in it, life in it. This is just a place I sleep. Diana moved to the windows, looking out over the park. She could see the outline of trees, the paths lit by street lamps, the distant glow of buildings on the other side. Behind her she heard James pour drinks, whiskey from the sound of it. He appeared beside her, handing her a crystal tumbler. They stood in silence, sipping expensive whiskey, watching the city that never sleeps. I keep thinking I'm going to wake up, James said softly. That this is a dream. You, here, in my space, talking to me like maybe we have a chance. If it's a dream, we're both having it. That's the best kind. Diana turned to face him, setting her glass down on the nearby table. Show me the rest of the place. It was a simple request, but the way James's eyes darkened suggested he understood the subtext. He took her hand, led her through the modern kitchen, the media room, his home office. Each space was impeccably decorated and utterly impersonal. Where do you actually live? Diana asked, because this feels like a showroom. It is a showroom. I live at the office, he smiled ruefully. Or I did until recently. Now I keep thinking about changing that. Because of Ethan. Because of both of you. Ethan's been teaching me that there's more to life than the next deal. And you? He pulled her closer, his hands settling on her waist. You make me want to remember who I was before I became James Hartford, CEO. When I was just James, a man who loved a woman so much he couldn't think straight. Are you trying to seduce me with nostalgia? Is it working? Diana laughed despite herself. Maybe. He led her up the stairs to the second floor, the master suite. The bedroom was dominated by a massive bed facing windows that showcased the park, more art on the walls, more expensive emptiness. But on the nightstand, Diana spotted something that made her breath catch. Another photograph, this one from their wedding day. James in his tux, her in her white gown, both of them laughing at something long forgotten. "You kept this too," she whispered. "I kept everything. Every photo, every memory, every piece of you I had left." James came up behind her, his hands on her shoulders. "I've been living in the past for 25 years, Diana, trapped in what I lost. Maybe it's time to build something new instead." She turned in his arms, looking up at him. "I don't know how to do this, how to trust this." "Neither do I, but we could figure it out together." His mouth found hers again, and this time there was less tenderness, more hunger. Diana responded in kind, her body pressing against his, her hands sliding up into his hair. She'd forgotten how tall he was, how completely he could envelope her. She'd forgotten the way he tasted, the sound he made low in his throat when she kissed him deeper. His hands moved up her back, finding the zipper of her dress. He paused, pulling back to look at her questioningly. "Are you sure?" he asked, his voice rough. Diana should say no, should slow down, think, be rational. They'd only reconnected a week ago. They had decades of hurt between them. This was too fast, too intense, too risky. But looking at James, seeing the desire and tenderness and desperate hope in his eyes, she couldn't make herself care about rational. "I'm sure," she whispered. He lowered the zipper slowly, his fingers trailing down her spine. Diana shivered at his touch, her body awakening to sensations she'd thought long dead. The dress slipped from her shoulders, pooling at her feet. James stepped back, his gaze traveling over her body with reverence. "You're even more beautiful than I remembered. I'm 55, everything's heading south." "You're perfect." He pulled her close again, and she could feel his arousal pressing against her. "God, Diana, I've dreamed about this, about you, for so long." She began unbuttoning his shirt, her fingers trembling slightly. "Then stop talking and make those dreams reality." What followed was both familiar and brand new. They knew each other's bodies once, but 25 years had changed them both. Diana had silver in her hair and softness at her waist. James had scars she didn't recognize and muscle that came from those early morning runs. But the chemistry, that hadn't changed. If anything, it had intensified, sharpened by years of longing and loss. James laid her on his bed with infinite care, as if she might shatter. His mouth traced paths down her neck, across her collarbones, down to her breasts. Diana arched beneath him, her hands clutching his shoulders, soft sounds escaping her throat. "I want to take my time," he murmured against her skin. "I want to relearn every inch of you. Later, right now I need—" She pulled him up to kiss him hard. "I need you, all of you." He positioned himself between her thighs, his eyes locked on hers as he entered her slowly. Diana gasped at the sensation, fullness, connection, coming home. They moved together in a rhythm that felt both ancient and new, bodies remembering what minds had tried to forget. James's hands were everywhere, cupping her face, tangling in her hair, gripping her hips. Diana met him thrust for thrust, her nails digging into his back, her legs wrapping around him. The pleasure built steadily, inexorably, carrying them both toward the edge. "I love you," James said against her mouth. "I never stopped loving you." The words broke something open inside Diana. She cried out, her body convulsing around him, pleasure cascading through her in waves. James followed moments later, burying his face in her neck, her name a prayer on his lips. Afterward, they lay tangled together, both trembling. James pulled the covers over them, gathering Diana close against his chest. She could hear his heart pounding, feel his chest rising and falling with each breath. "Stay," he whispered. "Stay tonight." Diana knew she should go back to her hotel, should maintain some distance, some independence, but wrapped in James's arms, in his bed, in the warmth of their rekindled passion, she couldn't make herself leave. "Okay," she said softly. "I'll stay." Diana woke to sunlight streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows and the smell of coffee. She stretched in James's enormous bed, deliciously sore in places she'd forgotten could ache. The sound of movement drew her attention to the doorway. James appeared carrying a tray with coffee, croissants, and fresh fruit. He was in pajama pants and nothing else, his chest still impressive for a man nearing 60. "You cooked," she said, sitting up and pulling the sheet around herself. "I ordered from the French bakery downstairs, close enough." He set the tray on the bed between them, pouring coffee into delicate china cups. "How do you take it now? You used to like it black." "2 sugars, splash of cream. Age has made me need sweetness." He prepared her coffee exactly right, handed it to her, and watched as she took the first sip. The simple domesticity of the moment, sharing breakfast in bed, morning light making everything soft, felt impossibly intimate. "What are you thinking?" James asked. "That I don't remember the last time I had breakfast in bed. Ethan used to bring me burnt toast and watery orange juice on Mother's Day, but that stopped when he went to college. I haven't made breakfast for anyone since you left. This should probably count as progress." Diana smiled despite herself. "Ordering from a bakery counts as progress? For me? Absolutely." He reached over, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "I want to make you breakfast every morning. Real breakfast. I want to learn how to cook again, how to do normal domestic things that make a space feel like home." "James, I know, too much, too fast. But Diana, I'm 57 years old. I don't have time to waste playing games or moving slowly. I know what I want. I've known for 25 years. The question is whether you're willing to take the risk." Diana set down her coffee cup, her hands trembling slightly. "Last night it was everything. But one night doesn't erase decades of hurt and distance. I'm not trying to erase anything. I'm trying to build something new on top of the old foundation, wiser, stronger, better." He moved the tray aside, pulling her into his arms. "Give me a chance to prove I've changed. Come to my house in the Hamptons next weekend. Let me show you what a real partnership could look like." I have a client presentation Monday. I can't just..." "Then come Monday evening. Stay through the week. Work from there if you need to. I'll work from there too. We'll figure out how to exist in the same space, build something real." It was insane, completely insane. She barely knew this version of James, this man who wanted breakfast and partnership and time together. But looking into his eyes, seeing the desperate hope there, Diana found herself nodding. "1 week," she said. "We'll try for 1 week. But James, if it doesn't work, if we fall back into old patterns, then we'll figure that out too. But it will work. I'll make sure it works." He kissed her, soft and sweet and full of promise. Diana kissed him back, allowing herself to hope. It was dangerous and foolish and probably destined for disaster. But maybe, just maybe, second chances were real. And maybe, after 25 years of loneliness, she deserved to take the risk. Monday afternoon, after her client presentation, Diana took a car to James's estate in Southampton. The drive gave her too much time to think, to question, to imagine everything that could go wrong. Ethan had called that morning, excited and nervous. "Are you sure about this, Mom?" he'd asked. "Absolutely not, but I'm doing it anyway." "That's either brave or crazy." "Probably both." Diana had paused. "How do you feel about it? Your father and I trying again?" "Honestly, I think it's great. I've watched him this week, Mom. He's different when he talks about you. Lighter, more human, and you've been alone too long." "I haven't been alone. I've had you." "That's not the same thing. You've been a great mom, but you've never let yourself be anything else. Maybe it's time to be Diana, not just Ethan's mother or Diana the designer." His wisdom had surprised her, though it shouldn't have. At 24, her son saw things clearly, without the baggage of lived experience weighing down his perspective. The car pulled through gates onto a long, tree-lined drive. The house appeared gradually, a stunning contemporary structure of wood and glass that seemed to grow organically from the landscape. Nothing like the cold marble mansion they'd shared when married. This felt warm, inviting, human. James appeared on the front steps before the car fully stopped. He was in jeans and a casual shirt, barefoot, more relaxed than Diana had ever seen him. He opened her door, helping her out, and kissed her before she could speak. "Welcome," he said against her mouth. This house. I built it 5 years ago. Tired of the empty formality of the old place. Wanted something that felt like it could be a home, even if I was the only one in it. He took her bags from the driver, dismissing the car. Now maybe it can finally fulfill its purpose. He led her inside, and Diana fell in love immediately. The main room was open and airy, with huge windows overlooking the ocean. Comfortable furniture invited actual sitting, not just display. Books lined built-in shelves. Plants thrived in corners. It felt lived in despite James claiming he rarely used it. I hired someone to come maintain it, he admitted. Water the plants, keep things fresh, in case I ever actually decided to spend time here. It's beautiful. It's ours for this week at least. Let me show you your room. My room. I'm not presuming anything. You'll have your own space, your own bathroom. Complete privacy if you want it. He carried her bags up a floating staircase to the second floor, though I'm hoping you won't want it. The guest room he showed her was lovely. Neutral colors, ocean views, a comfortable bed with white linens. But Diana noticed his room was directly across the hall, door open, a clear invitation. This is perfect, she said. James set down her bags, moved to the windows. I have to take a few calls this afternoon, deals that can't wait. But tonight, I'm all yours. We can cook together, walk on the beach, just be. No obligations, no schedules, no empire demanding attention. Who are you and what have you done with James Hartford? He smiled, but there was vulnerability in it. I'm a man trying to learn how to live instead of just work. Be patient with me. I'm not very good at it yet. After he left for his calls, Diana unpacked slowly, hanging clothes in the closet, setting toiletries in the bathroom, making small claims on the space. She changed into comfortable linen pants and a soft sweater, then explored the house. The kitchen was a chef's dream. Commercial appliances, a huge island, windows overlooking a garden. She found fresh ingredients in the refrigerator, a note from James. I remembered you used to love making pasta from scratch. Thought we could try together? Diana pressed the note to her chest, feeling tears sting her eyes. This man, this version of James who left her romantic notes in stocked kitchens and wanted to cook pasta together, was dangerous to her carefully constructed defenses. She spent the afternoon on the deck, breathing in ocean air, trying to relax. She could hear James's voice occasionally from his office. Sharp, commanding, the CEO voice she remembered. But when he finally emerged around 5, he'd left that persona behind. Come on, he said, taking her hand. Let's make dinner. They worked side by side in the kitchen, making pasta dough and sauce from scratch. James was clumsy at first, clearly not someone who'd spent much time cooking, but he followed Diana's instructions, laughed at his mistakes, and slowly found a rhythm. I'd forgotten how tactile this is, he said, kneading dough, how present you have to be. Can't think about the next deal when your hands are covered in flour. That's the point. Being present in the moment. I'm not good at that. You could be, with practice. They ate on the deck as the sun set over the ocean, their simple pasta dinner tasting better than any restaurant meal Diana had eaten. James opened an excellent wine, and they talked about everything and nothing. Books they'd read, places they'd traveled, the changing nature of their respective industries. Do you remember our honeymoon? James asked as they watched the waves. That tiny villa in Santorini? I remember the sunset from our terrace, the way the light turned everything gold. I remember being so happy it scared me, like I'd been given something too precious, too perfect, and I didn't know how to keep it. He reached for her hand. I think that's why I worked so hard afterward, trying to build something permanent, something that couldn't slip away, but I was building the wrong thing. You couldn't have known that then. I should have. You tried to tell me. I just didn't listen. Diana squeezed his hand. We were young. We both made mistakes. You kept our son from me. You made me feel invisible. The words hung between them, painful truths finally spoken clearly. You're right, James said finally. I did. And I'm sorry. Truly, deeply sorry. If I could go back and shake sense into my younger self, I would. And I'm sorry I didn't tell you about Ethan. You deserve to know, to have a choice. We can't change the past, but maybe we can learn from it. Do better this time. As darkness fell, they cleaned up together, falling into an easy rhythm. James washed, Diana dried, and it felt like the most natural thing in the world. Afterward, he led her down to the beach, both of them barefoot in the sand. The ocean was luminous under the moon, waves creating their eternal rhythm. They walked in comfortable silence, just being together, hands clasped. "I want to tell you something," James said eventually. "After you left, I threw myself into work even harder, built Hartford Global into what it is today, made more money than anyone could spend in a lifetime, and every single achievement felt hollow because you weren't there to share it with." "James, let me finish. I convinced myself that I was fine, that work was enough, that I didn't need anything else. But I was lying to myself. Every morning I woke up alone. Every night I went to bed alone. Every success was just another marker of how empty my life had become." He stopped walking, turned to face her. "Then I saw you at that gala, and it was like someone had turned the lights back on. Suddenly I could see how much life I'd been missing." Diana cupped his face, feeling the scratch of stubble against her palms. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I love you. I've loved you for 30 years, married, divorced, separated by my own stupidity. I love you, Diana Morrison, and I'm asking you to give me a chance to build a real life with you. Not the shallow existence we had before, but something real and messy and human. I'm scared." "So am I. Terrified, actually. But I'm more scared of spending another 25 years without you." Diana kissed him, pouring years of loneliness and longing into it. James responded with equal intensity, pulling her against him, his hands tangling in her hair. The waves crashed behind them, the moon painted everything silver, and Diana felt something inside her break open, a wall she'd built around her heart, crumbling at last. "Take me inside," she whispered against his mouth they barely made. "It to the house." James kissed her against the door, in the hallway, up the stairs. By the time they reached his bedroom, both were breathing hard, clothes being shed as they moved. This time was different from Saturday night, less desperate, more intentional. James took his time, exploring every inch of her skin with his mouth, his hands, whispering how beautiful she was, how much he'd missed her, how he'd dreamed of this. Diana let herself be vulnerable, allowed herself to feel everything she'd been suppressing for decades. His touch reignited nerve endings she'd thought dead. His words unlocked emotions she'd kept carefully controlled. When he finally entered her, they both gasped at the connection, their eyes locked, holding that gaze as they moved together, slow and deep, building pleasure gradually, savoring every sensation. "I love you," James said, his voice breaking with emotion. "I never stopped. I never will." "I love you too," Diana whispered, the words escaping before she could stop them. "God help me. I still love you." They made love for hours, pausing only to catch their breath before beginning again. James was attentive and giving, focused on her pleasure in ways she didn't remember from their marriage. Diana responded with equal passion, showing him without words what his touch did to her. Afterward, wrapped in his arms, Diana felt something she hadn't felt in 25 years, complete, whole home. "Stay with me," James whispered into her hair. "Not just this week. Stay, move in, let's build the life we should have had all along." Diana knew she should be cautious, should take time, think rationally, protect herself. But looking at James, seeing the vulnerability and hope and love in his eyes, she couldn't make herself say no. "Ask me again at the end of the week," she said softly. "I'll ask you every day until you say yes." Chapter 4. The week unfolded like a dream. James kept his promise. He worked only essential hours, spending most of his time with Diana. They cooked together, walked the beach at sunrise, read on the deck in the afternoon. They made love and talked and laughed and slowly remembered how to be partners. By Thursday, Diana felt something dangerous blooming inside her. Contentment. The kind that made her lower her guard, believe in fairy tales, hope for impossible things. That afternoon, while James was on a conference call, Diana received a call from Ethan. "Hey, sweetheart," she answered, stepping out onto the deck for privacy. "Mom, we need to talk." Ethan's voice was strained. "What's wrong?" "I think James should know we've been in contact about him. that I've been keeping you updated on how things are going between us. It feels deceptive, and if he finds out accidentally—" "You're right." Diana sank into a deck chair. "I've been meaning to tell him. This week just felt so fragile. I didn't want to introduce anything that might shatter it. I think the longer we wait, the worse it gets. He needs to know the full truth. That I knew about him when I took the job, that you knew I was working for him, all of it. When did you become so wise?" "Comes from having a great mom." She could hear the smile in his voice. "Look, I know you're scared. But secrets destroyed you guys the first time. Don't let them do it again." After they hung up, Diana sat watching the waves and rehearsing different versions of the conversation. "Hey, James, funny thing. Ethan and I have been coordinating this whole time." "No, too casual. James, I need to tell you something about Ethan and me." "Better." "James, there's something you should know." "You look troubled." Diana startled. James had emerged from the house, his conference call apparently finished. He settled into the chair beside her, reaching for her hand. "Just thinking," she said. "About?" This was it. The moment to be honest, to clear the air before they went any further. Diana took a deep breath. "James, there's something I need to tell you about Ethan, about the whole situation with him working for you." "Okay." He looked wary but attentive. "When he took the job at Hartford Global, I knew. He told me where he was working, who he'd be working for. We talked about it, whether he should reveal himself immediately, whether it was fair to you, all of it." James went very still. "You knew. For 2 months." "Yes. And you didn't tell me. Either of you. Ethan wanted to understand you first, as a person, not just as his biological father, and I supported that choice. I thought giving you both time to build a relationship naturally, without the weight of biology forcing it, was the right thing to do. So you've been coordinating with Ethan behind my back. Not behind your back. You've been playing puppeteer with my life." James stood, pacing to the deck railing. "Again, making decisions about what I deserve to know, when I deserve to know it, without giving me any agency in my own damn life. That's not fair. Isn't it?" He spun to face her. 24 years ago, you decided I didn't need to know I had a son. 3 months ago, you and that son decided I didn't need to know he was working for me. When exactly were you planning to let me make my own informed decisions? We were trying to protect you. I don't need protection. I need honesty. I need people to treat me like an adult capable of handling difficult truths." His voice rose with each word. "I've been falling in love with you all over again this week, Diana. Opening my heart, making myself vulnerable, planning a future. And the whole time, you've been keeping secrets." Diana stood, moving toward him. "I was going to tell you. I'm telling you. That's what I'm doing right now. After you got caught, after Ethan apparently grew a conscience and pushed you into it. That's not— James, please, I know I should have told you sooner, but I was scared. Scared of exactly this reaction. Scared of breaking this fragile thing we've been building. By lying to me? By keeping information from me that directly affects my life? That's how you build trust?" He laughed bitterly. "I should have known. This is what you do, Diana. You make unilateral decisions and justify them as being for the best. You did it when you left me. You did it when you kept Ethan's secret, and you're still doing it now. I made one mistake 25 years ago. One mistake? One?" James's voice cracked. "You kept my son from me for 2 decades. You let him infiltrate my company. You've been coordinating with him behind my back, and you call that one mistake?" Diana felt tears burning her eyes. "I did what I thought was right." "For who? For you? Certainly not for me. And not for Ethan either. You've put him in an impossible position, caught between his parents, forced to keep secrets." James ran his hands through his hair, that familiar gesture of overwhelm. "I can't do this. I thought we could start fresh, but you're still the same person who doesn't trust me, who doesn't see me as an equal partner, who makes decisions without me. That's not true, isn't it? Prove it. Tell me one decision you've made in the last 3 months that involved actually consulting me. One choice where you saw me as a partner instead of someone to manage." Diana opened her mouth, then closed it, because he was right. Even this week, when they'd been so happy, she'd been managing the flow of information, deciding what James could handle and when. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I am too, because I really thought this could work." He moved toward the house, then stopped. "I need some time, alone, to think. James, please, just give me space." He disappeared into the house, and Diana heard a door close upstairs. She sank back into her chair, shaking, tears streaming down her face. Everything had fallen apart so quickly. One moment they'd been building a future, the next it was ashes. Her phone buzzed. "Ethan." "I'm sorry, Mom," he said when she answered. "I heard raised voices through the phone. Is everything okay?" "No, it's really not." Diana gave James space for an hour, then couldn't stand it anymore. She went upstairs, knocked on his closed bedroom door. "James, please, we need to talk about this." "I can't right now. We can't just leave it like this." Silence. Then, "I'll drive you back to the city tomorrow morning. For now, I need to be alone." Diana returned to her own room, feeling more desolate than she had in years. She'd been so close to having everything: the man she loved, a complete family, a second chance. And she'd destroyed it by doing exactly what she'd done the first time, not trusting James enough to include him in difficult decisions. She barely slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw James's face, the hurt, the betrayal, the resignation. She'd broken his heart again, just like she'd sworn she wouldn't. Morning came gray and rainy, matching her mood. Diana packed mechanically, then went downstairs to find James already in the kitchen, pouring coffee. He looked as exhausted as she felt. "Morning," he said stiffly. "Morning. Coffee's ready. We should leave in about an hour to miss the worst traffic." "James, please, can we talk about this?" He set down his mug, finally looking at her directly. "What is there to say? You don't trust me. You never did. And I can't build a life with someone who sees me as a problem to manage rather than a partner to trust." "I do trust you." "Do you?" "Because from where I'm standing, you've spent 25 years making every major decision about our son without consulting me. And even when we reconnected, even when I opened my heart to you, you were still keeping secrets. I made a mistake. I'm sorry. But James, that doesn't erase what we've built this week. Doesn't it? How do I know what's real and what's just you managing me, telling me what you think I can handle?" He turned away. "I've spent my entire adult life feeling like I wasn't enough. Not enough for my father, who pushed me to build an empire. Not enough for you, who left me. Not enough for the son I didn't know I had. And just when I thought maybe I could finally be enough, you remind me that I'm still just someone to be managed and controlled." Diana's tears fell freely now. "That's not true. You're everything, James. You always have been. That's why losing you broke me so completely. That's why I was so scared to risk it again. Being scared isn't an excuse for lying. I didn't lie. I just didn't tell you everything. Same thing." He picked up her bags. "Come on, let's get you back to the city." The drive was silent and painful. Diana stared out the window, watching the Hamptons landscape give way to suburban sprawl, then the city skyline. Beside her, James drove with rigid focus, his jaw tight. When they finally pulled up to her hotel, Diana couldn't let him drive away without one more try. "James, please, don't throw away what we could have because I made a mistake. Let me fix this." "You can't fix it, Diana. That's what you don't understand. Some things are so fundamentally broken they can't be repaired. They can only be replaced. And I can't replace the trust you destroyed. Not again." "So that's it? After everything, you're just going to walk away?" "No, you're going to walk away. Like you always do. Like you did 25 years ago, and like you would have done eventually this time too, because you fundamentally don't believe I can be the partner you need." He met her eyes, and the devastation there cut her to the core. "I love you. God help me, I still love you. But love isn't enough when there's no trust." He got out, retrieved her bags from the trunk, and set them on the sidewalk. Then, without another word, he got back in his car and drove away. Diana stood on the sidewalk, watching him disappear into traffic, and felt her world crumble for the second time in her life. 3 days passed in a fog. Diana went through the motions, work calls, emails, forcing herself to eat. Caroline called repeatedly. She didn't answer. Ethan came to her hotel room, and she sent him away, unable to face her son's guilt over triggering the explosion. On Sunday evening, Caroline simply showed up and wouldn't leave. "Enough," she said, finding Diana still in pajamas at 6 p.m. "You've wallowed enough. Now we talk." "I don't want to talk." "Too bad, because my brother's in his penthouse doing exactly the same thing, refusing to eat, refusing to answer calls, refusing to be a human being. And I'm sick of both of you being miserable when you should be together. He hates me. He loves you. That's the problem. He loves you so much that your betrayal cut him to the bone." "I didn't betray him. Didn't you?" Caroline sat on the edge of the bed, forcing Diana to look at her. "You kept his son's secret. Then, when that son got close to James, you coordinated with Ethan without telling James. From his perspective, you've been managing and manipulating his life for 24 years. How is that not betrayal?" Diana crumbled. "I was trying to protect everyone. By taking away their agency, by making decisions for grown adults?" Caroline shook her head. "Diana, I love you. You're my best friend. But you need to hear this. James is right. You don't trust him. You never have. You loved him, but you didn't trust him to be a real partner. And that's why your marriage failed the first time. That's not fair. Isn't it? Think about it. When things got hard, instead of talking to James, instead of demanding he change, instead of fighting for your marriage, you left. You made a unilateral decision and executed it, and you've been making unilateral decisions about him ever since." The words hit like physical blows because they were true. Diana had spent 25 years telling herself she'd left because James wasn't present, wasn't a partner. But the truth was, she'd never given him the chance to be. She'd judged him incapable and left before he could prove her wrong or right. "Oh, God," she whispered, "what have I done?" "Made mistakes, big ones. But Diana, you can fix this. If you're willing to actually change, actually trust him, actually be vulnerable enough to build a real partnership. He won't forgive me. He will. Because he loves you. But you have to show him that you've really understood what went wrong, that you're ready to be different this time." "How?" Caroline smiled. "By being brave enough to let him make his own choices, even if those choices hurt you, even if you think you know better, even if you're terrified of the outcome." Monday afternoon, Diana walked into Hartford Global Tower. She hadn't called ahead, hadn't made an appointment. She was winging this entirely, and the terror of that felt appropriate somehow. The receptionist tried to stop her. "Mr. Hartford is in meetings. Tell him Diana Morrison is here. He'll see me." She wouldn't. Diana was, Anna, certain he'd refuse, send her away, protect himself from more hurt. But 3 minutes later, the receptionist's phone buzzed. "He says to go up. Executive floor, corner office." Diana's hands shook in the elevator. What would she say? How could she possibly explain? Ethan met her when the elevator doors opened. He looked worried. "Mom, he's pretty raw right now. Maybe I need to do this. But Ethan," she took his hands, "I'm sorry for putting you in the middle, for making you part of my mistakes. You deserved better from both of us." "I'm fine, Mom. I just want you both to be happy." James's office was imposing. Corner space with windows overlooking the city, expensive furniture, that photo of her still on the credenza behind his desk. He stood when she entered, his expression carefully neutral. "Diana, thank you for seeing me. You have 5 minutes." She'd prepared a speech, had rehearsed it in the mirror, practiced every word. But standing in front of him, seeing the hurt he was trying to hide, everything she'd planned evaporated. "I'm sorry," she said simply. "Not sorry that I got caught, not sorry I hurt you, though I am, desperately, but sorry for who I've been. For 25 years, I've been making decisions for everyone around me, believing I knew best, protecting people from truths I thought they couldn't handle. And I was wrong. Completely, fundamentally wrong." James said nothing, just waited. "You deserve to know about Ethan from the beginning. Maybe I couldn't tell you immediately, but I should have told you years ago. And when Ethan took this job, I should have insisted he tell you right away. I should have called you myself. Instead, I managed and coordinated and controlled like always. Diana took a shaky breath. Caroline helped me see something. I never trusted you. Not really. I loved you, but I didn't trust you to be a real partner, and when our marriage got hard, instead of fighting for it, instead of demanding you change, I just left. Diana, let me finish, please. She moved closer. I've spent 25 years blaming you for our marriage failing, and you deserve some of that blame. You were consumed by work, you weren't present, you didn't prioritize us. But I'm equally to blame, because I never gave you the chance to fix it. I never trusted you enough to be vulnerable, to demand better, to build something real together. I just ran. James's expression cracked slightly. You had reason to run. I was a terrible husband. You were young and ambitious and misguided about what mattered, but I never gave you the chance to grow. And then I spent 2 decades making sure you never got the chance to be a father either. Diana's voice broke. I robbed you of that. I robbed Ethan of that, and I'm so sorry. Why are you telling me this now? Because I finally understand. I want a second chance with you, James. A real one, where we're actual partners, where I trust you enough to include you in difficult decisions, where we fight instead of running, where we build something together instead of me trying to control everything. She took another step closer. But that means giving you the choice, really giving it to you, not just the illusion of choice while I manipulate things behind the scenes. What choice? Whether you want that second chance with me, whether you can forgive me, whether you're willing to risk trusting me again. Diana forced herself to hold his gaze. I'm asking, James. Not telling, not managing, not deciding for you. I'm asking, do you want to try again? For real this time? The silence stretched between them. Diana forced herself not to fill it, not to explain or justify or convince. This was his choice, his decision, and she had to respect it, whatever he chose. Finally, James spoke. I don't know if I can trust you. That's fair. I don't know if you can really change, if you can stop managing everyone's life and just be a partner. I don't know either, but I want to try. What if we try and it falls apart again? Then at least we'll know we gave it everything, that we were brave enough to be vulnerable, to trust, to fight for something real. Diana took one final step, close enough to touch him, but not touching. I love you, James Hartford. I've loved you for 30 years, through marriage and divorce and decades of distance, and I'm done running, done protecting myself. If you want me, I'm here. Completely, vulnerably, terrifyingly here. But I need you to decide, really decide, with all the information, with full agency. Do you want this? Do you want us? James stared at her for what felt like an eternity. Then, slowly, his hand came up to cup her face. I'm terrified, he said softly. Me too. We're probably going to hurt each other again. Probably. This might be the stupidest risk I've ever taken. Definitely. He smiled slightly, the first crack in his armor. But I can't let you go again. I tried for 25 years and I couldn't manage it. So yes, Diana, I want this. I want us. I want to try. Diana closed the remaining distance, wrapping her arms around him. James pulled her close, burying his face in her hair, and they stood holding each other while the city hummed below. We're really doing this, Diana whispered. We're really doing this. But Diana, new rules this time, complete honesty, even when it's hard, even when it hurts, even when you think you're protecting me. I promise. And we fight. When things get difficult, we fight it out. We don't run. I promise. And we include each other in decisions, real partnership, real trust. Yes, all of it, I promise. James pulled back to look at her. I need one more thing. Anything. Come with me, now. There's somewhere we need to go. James drove them to a small church in Brooklyn. Diana looked at him questioningly as he parked. Where are we? You'll see. He led her inside, where a young priest greeted them warmly. Mr. Hartford, right on time. Thank you for doing this on short notice, Father. Diana's confusion must have shown because James turned to her with something almost like nervousness. 25 years ago, I made vows to you. in front of hundreds of people, in a huge cathedral with all the trappings of society watching, and I broke every one of those vows. He took both her hands. I want to make new vows, just us, no audience, no expectations. I want to promise you, here and now, that this time will be different. James, we don't have to. I need to. Please, let me do this. The priest led them to the small chapel. Candlelight flickered, casting soft shadows. It was simple, intimate, perfect. I can't perform a legal ceremony, the priest explained, but I can bless your commitment to each other, a renewal of vows, if you will. James and Diana stood facing each other, hands clasped. The priest said a few words about second chances, forgiveness, and the courage to love. Then James began speaking. Diana, I vow to see you, to really see you, your needs, your fears, your dreams. I vow to be present, not just physically, but emotionally, mentally, fully present in our life together. I vow to make you my priority, not work, not empire, not success, you. And I vow to trust you enough to be vulnerable, to ask for help, to build a partnership where we're equals. Diana's tears fell freely now. James, I vow to trust you, to include you in decisions, to give you agency in your own life, to stop managing and controlling. I vow to fight for us, to stay when things get hard, to demand better instead of running. I vow to be open about Ethan, to include you in his life completely, to help you build the relationship you both deserve. And I vow to let myself be loved by you, fully and without reservation. The priest blessed them, and then James kissed her, soft and reverent and full of promise. When they emerged from the church into the evening air, Diana felt lighter than she had in years. The past was finally, truly behind them. Ahead lay uncertainty, challenges, the hard work of building something real. But for the first time in 25 years, she believed they could do it. Take me home, she said to James. Your hotel? No, your penthouse, our home. Chapter 5. The next 3 months were a revelation. Diana and James learned how to be partners, real ones, not the shallow imitation they'd had in their marriage. She moved into his penthouse, and together they made it a home. She brought her plants, her favorite books, her personality. He cleared space in his life, delegated more at work, set boundaries, showed up for dinner every night. They fought sometimes, real fights where they said difficult truths and worked through disagreements instead of avoiding them. Diana learned to speak her needs directly instead of managing from the shadows. James learned to prioritize their relationship over his company's demands. And slowly, they built trust. Ethan watched this transformation with something like awe. His parents, who he'd only known as separate entities, became a unit. They consulted each other before making decisions. They supported each other's careers. They laughed together, cooked together, existed together with the easy comfort of true partnership. One Saturday in June, the three of them gathered at James's estate in the Hamptons for a family weekend. Diana was in the kitchen preparing lunch, while James grilled on the deck and Ethan set the table. "This is surreal," Ethan said, watching his parents work in tandem through the open doors. "Good surreal, but surreal." "Tell me about it," Diana said, slicing tomatoes. 3 months ago I couldn't imagine this. Now I can't imagine anything else." James came in carrying a platter of grilled chicken. "What are we talking about?" "How weird and wonderful this is," Ethan said, agreed on both counts. James kissed Diana's temple as he passed, a casual intimacy that still made her heart flutter. "Though I'd argue it's more wonderful than weird." "Wait until Thanksgiving," Diana teased. "Then you'll understand weird. Caroline's already planning this massive family dinner with her kids, our families." "Our family," James corrected gently. "All of us together." The word family hit differently now. For years, Diana's family had been just her and Ethan. James's family had been his work, his sister occasionally. Now family meant all of them, messy, complicated, beautiful. They ate lunch on the deck overlooking the ocean, conversation flowing easily. Ethan told them about a new project he was spearheading at Hartford Global, with James's full support and mentorship. Diana shared details about her biggest contract yet, a chain of luxury hotels across Europe. James announced he'd be reducing his travel schedule, empowering his executive team to handle more international deals. You're really doing it, Ethan said to his father, becoming someone who doesn't live at the office. I'm trying. Your mother keeps me honest. James reached for Diana's hand. Though I'm discovering I prefer being home anyway. Work is less appealing when you have something better to come home to. After lunch, Ethan excused himself to take a walk on the beach, giving his parents time alone. Diana and James cleaned up together, then settled on the deck with coffee. I have something for you, James said, reaching into his pocket. He pulled out a small velvet box. Diana's heart leaped. James! Before you panic, it's not an engagement ring. Not yet, anyway. I know we're still rebuilding, and I'm not going to rush that. He opened the box to reveal a delicate bracelet, white gold with 3 charms. A heart, a house, and a small figure that looked like it might be a child. The heart for our love, James explained. The house for the home we're building. And this one is Ethan, the son who brought us back together. I wanted you to have something that represents our family. All 3 of us. Diana's vision blurred with tears as he fastened it around her wrist. It's perfect. So are you, so is this, so is us. He kissed her softly. I know it's only been 3 months. I know we're still learning. But Diana, I've never been happier, never felt more complete, and I wanted you to know that. I feel it too. Sometimes I wake up and can't believe this is real. Believe it, I'm not going anywhere. You're stuck with me this time. Good, because I'm not running either. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the waves, both processing how far they'd come. 3 months ago, they'd been standing in his office, taking the biggest risk of their lives. Now they were here, building something real, something lasting. There's something else we should discuss, James said eventually. Ethan's future at Hartford Global. What about it? He's incredibly talented, but I worry that working for me limits his growth. People will always see him as the boss's son, question whether his success is merit-based or nepotism. Diana had been thinking the same thing. What are you proposing? I want to fund a startup for him. Let him build something of his own, the way you built your design firm, the way I built Hartford Global. Give him the resources and freedom to create something separate from my shadow. Have you talked to Ethan about this? Not yet. I wanted to discuss it with you first. See if you thought it was a good idea or if I'm being overprotective. Diana's heart swelled. This consulting her, including her in decisions about their son, valuing her perspective, this was the partnership she'd always needed. I think it's a wonderful idea. But James, let Ethan decide. Present the option and then support whatever he chooses. Even if he chooses to stay at Hartford Global, even then, this is his life, his choice. James pulled her close. Look at you, not making decisions for everyone. I'm learning. You're a good teacher. They talked for another hour, about Ethan, about their respective businesses, about where they wanted to be in 5 years, 10 years. They dreamed together, planned together, built their future together. When Ethan returned from his walk, they called him up to the deck. We want to talk to you about something, James began. Ethan looked between them nervously. That sounds ominous. It's not. At least, I hope it's not. James outlined his proposal, funding a startup, supporting Ethan's independence, giving him the freedom to build something of his own. Ethan was quiet for a long moment. Why? Because you're brilliant and talented and deserve the chance to prove it on your own terms, James said. And because I want to be a father who supports your dreams, not one who expects you to fulfill mine. I need to think about it, Ethan said slowly. Of course. Take all the time you need. And Ethan, whatever you decide, I'm proud of you. I'm grateful I get to be your father, even if I came to it late. Ethan's eyes shone with emotion. Thanks, Dad. The word, Dad, was still new. Ethan had started using it about a month ago, tentatively at first, then with more confidence. Every time James heard it, Diana saw him light up. That evening, the 3 of them cooked dinner together, a chaotic, laughing affair involving too many cooks and not enough counter space. But it was perfect. They ate by candlelight, talking about everything and nothing, just being a family. Later, after Ethan had gone to bed in his guest room, Diana and James walked on the beach under the stars. Thank you, Diana said. For what? For being willing to try. For forgiving me. For becoming the man I always knew you could be. I became this man because of you, because you challenged me, called me on my failures, demanded better. James stopped walking, turning to face her. I know I said the bracelet isn't an engagement ring, but Diana, I'm going to ask you to marry me again. Maybe not today, maybe not next week, but soon, because I want forever with you. I want that too. And when I ask, I want Ethan there. I want him to be part of it, part of us choosing to be a family officially. Diana's tears came freely now. He'd love that. So we're agreed? We're doing this, building a life together, all three of us? We're doing this. James kissed her then, deep and passionate and full of promise. The waves crashed around them, the stars wheeled overhead, and Diana felt like she'd finally come home after a quarter-century of wandering. 3 months later, in September, James gathered both Diana and Ethan at the coastal estate for what he claimed was just a family weekend. But Diana suspected something more when she saw him pacing nervously, when Caroline showed up with a suspiciously large smile, when Ethan kept giving his father knowing looks. That evening, James led them down to the beach at sunset, the same spot where he and Diana had first reunited physically, where they had admitted they still loved each other. I want to ask you both something, James began, his voice unsteady with emotion. Ethan, Diana, you're the two most important people in my life. You're my family, and I want to make that official. He turned to Ethan first. Son, I know I wasn't there for the first 24 years of your life. I can't get those years back, and I'll always regret missing them. But I want to be there for every year going forward. Will you accept me as your father? Really, officially, not just biologically. Ethan's eyes filled with tears. You already are my father, in every way that matters. Thank you. James pulled him into a tight hug, both men holding each other fiercely. Then James turned to Diana, dropping to one knee in the sand. From his pocket, he produced a ring, not the huge diamond he'd given her 25 years ago, but a simple, elegant band with 3 stones. Diana Morrison, 25 years ago I asked you to marry me, and I broke every promise I made. I wasn't the husband you deserved, but you've given me a second chance, a gift I never expected and don't deserve. So I'm asking again, but different this time. I'm asking you to marry me, not because society expects it, not to build an empire, but because I love you, because you make me better, because I want to wake up next to you every morning and fall asleep holding you every night, because you're my partner, my equal, my best friend, and the love of my life. Will you marry me? Diana looked at the man kneeling before her, older now, wiser, fully present in a way he'd never been before. Then she looked at Ethan, standing beside them with tears streaming down his face. Her family. Her impossible, beautiful, hard-won family. Yes, she said, her voice breaking. 1,000 times yes. James slipped the ring onto her finger, then stood and pulled her into a kiss. Ethan whooped and hugged them both, all 3 of them laughing and crying together. Caroline appeared from the house where she'd apparently been hiding, champagne in hand. Finally, took you 2 long enough. You knew, Diana asked. Of course I knew. James has been planning this for weeks, driving me crazy with the details. She popped the champagne. To second chances and new beginnings. They celebrated on the beach as the sun set, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks. Diana couldn't stop looking at the ring on her finger, 3 stones representing past, present, and future, or perhaps the 3 of them forming a family. What are you thinking? James asked as Ethan and Caroline walked up to the house to get glasses. That I can't believe this is real. That after 25 years of loneliness and regret, I get to have everything. We both do. He pulled her close. And this time, we're going to do it right. Small wedding, just family and close friends. Vows we write ourselves. A marriage based on partnership and trust. When? Whenever you want. Tomorrow, next year, I don't care. As long as I get forever with you. Diana rested her head against his chest, listening to his heartbeat. How about New Year's Eve? Start the year as we mean to go on. Together. Perfect. New Year's Eve arrived cold and clear. Diana and James were married in the same small Brooklyn church where they'd renewed their vows months earlier. The guest list was intimate: Ethan, Caroline, and her family, a handful of close friends. No society fanfare, no press, just the people who mattered most. Diana wore a simple cream dress, elegant but understated. James wore a dark suit. Ethan walked his mother down the aisle, then stood beside James as his best man, a role that represented so much more than tradition. Their vows were the truth of their journey, acknowledging failures, celebrating growth, promising partnership. When the priest pronounced them husband and wife, James kissed her with a tenderness that made everyone watching tear up. The reception was at James's penthouse, which Diana had helped transform into a real home. They danced, ate, laughed, celebrated. Carolyn gave a toast about second chances being more precious than first ones, because they're earned, not assumed. Ethan gave a toast about family being the people who show up, who stay, who fight for each other even when it's hard. I'm grateful my parents were brave enough to try again, to show me that love isn't about perfection, it's about perseverance. At midnight, when the city erupted in celebration, Diana and James stood on their terrace overlooking the park. Fireworks painted the sky, and the man she loved held her close. "Happy New Year, Mrs. Hartford," he murmured against her hair. "Happy New Year, Mr. Hartford, though I'm keeping Morrison professionally. I'd expect nothing less from my independent, brilliant partner of a wife. Your partner who trusts you. My partner who I see and choose every single day." They kissed as the city celebrated around them, and Diana felt complete in a way she'd never imagined possible. Not the completion of finding your other half, but the completion of two whole people choosing to build something greater together. Behind them, through the windows, Ethan was laughing with Caroline's kids, their son, their family, their second chance. "Worth the wait?" James asked. Diana looked at the life they'd built, messy, complicated, fought for, real. Worth everything. Chapter 6. 18 months later, Diana stood in the garden of their Hamptons estate, arranging flowers for the party that afternoon. It was July, hot and bright, and they were celebrating Ethan's startup raising its Series A funding, $20 million for the fintech company he'd built with James's initial support, but his own vision and work. "Mom, stop fussing with the flowers. They're perfect," Ethan called from the deck. "I'm not fussing, I'm arranging." "You're fussing. It's what you do when you're nervous about something." Diana straightened, surprised he'd noticed. "I'm not nervous." "Liar." Ethan came down to the garden, taking the pruning shears from her hands. "What's going on?" "Nothing. I want today to be perfect for you. This is huge, sweetheart. Your company is really happening. It's already perfect. Stop managing and just enjoy it." Diana laughed. "Some habits die hard." "Speaking of habits, Dad's been locked in his office all morning. What's he working on? I thought he was delegating more." "He is. This is something else." Diana smiled mysteriously. "You'll see." The party began at 3, friends and investors arriving to celebrate Ethan's success. James emerged from his office looking pleased with himself, kissing Diana before joining the crowd. "What were you working on?" she murmured. "Surprise. You'll see." The afternoon unfolded beautifully. Good food, good company, genuine celebration of Ethan's achievement. Diana found herself watching her family. James talking business with Ethan's co-founder. Caroline holding court with investors. Ethan glowing with success and confidence. This was what she'd been missing for 25 years. Not just James, but the sense of completeness that came from being part of something larger than herself. As the sun began to set, James called everyone's attention. "I want to make an announcement. Actually, 2 announcements." Ethan looked at Diana questioningly. She shrugged. She only knew about one. "First," James continued, "I'm stepping down as CEO of Hartford Global." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Diana's hand flew to her mouth. "Don't worry, I'm not retiring. I'm moving to chairman of the board and handing CEO responsibilities to my COO, who's been ready for this for years. I want more time for what matters: family, travel, maybe even learning to golf badly." He winked at Diana. "My wife has been gently suggesting I need more balance in my life." "Not so gently," Diana called out, making everyone laugh. "Fair point." James's expression grew more serious. The second announcement is that Diana and I are creating a foundation, the Morrison Hartford Foundation for Family Reunification. We'll be funding programs that help families separated by circumstance, whether that's incarceration, immigration, economic hardship, or simply mistakes people made when they were young and scared. Diana felt tears building. They'd discussed the foundation, but she hadn't known James was ready to announce it. "We can't give back the 24 years we lost," James continued, his voice thick with emotion. "But maybe we can help other families find each other sooner, build connections, create second chances, reunite parents and children who've been separated by life circumstances." He pulled Diana close. "This is our way of taking our mistakes and pain and turning them into something good, our way of honoring the family we built despite the odds." The crowd applauded. Ethan crossed to them, pulling both his parents into a hug. "I love you both," he said. "Thank you for not giving up." Later, after the guests had left and the three of them sat on the deck watching the stars emerge, Diana felt profoundly grateful. "Tell me the truth," she said to James. "Are you scared? About stepping down?" "Terrified. Hartford Global has been my identity for 30 years, but I'm more scared of missing more of life while I'm busy building empires." He took her hand. "I want to wake up slowly with you. Travel to those European hotels you're designing, watch Ethan build his company, maybe even learn to cook properly so I can stop just ordering from bakeries." "That would be novel. I want to actually live, Diana, not just work, and I can only do that if I let go of some control." Diana laughed. "Look at you learning lessons I'm still working on." "We're learning together, that's the point." Ethan checked his phone, then stood. "I have to take this call. Investor in California. You two lovebirds enjoy the evening." After he left, Diana and James sat in comfortable silence, hands clasped, watching the ocean. "Do you ever think about how different our lives could have been?" Diana asked. "If I'd told you about Ethan from the start, if you'd been a different kind of husband, if we'd found our way back together sooner?" "Sometimes, but then I think about who we are now, shaped by our mistakes, refined by our regrets, grateful for this second chance in a way we could never have been at 25, and I wouldn't change it." "Really? You wouldn't want those 24 years with Ethan?" "Of course I want them. I'll always mourn them. But Diana, our son is remarkable precisely because you raised him the way you did. He's kind and thoughtful and has a moral compass that came from watching you build a life on your own terms. Would he be the same person if I'd been in the picture? Still the workaholic asshole I was back then?" "We'll never know." "Exactly. So instead of mourning what we lost, I'm choosing to celebrate what we found. We get a second act. How many people can say that?" Diana leaned against him, feeling the steady rise and fall of his chest, the warmth of his body, the solidity of his presence. "I love you," she said simply. "I love you too. Every single day I choose you, and I'll keep choosing you for the rest of our lives." They sat holding each other as night fell completely, stars emerging one by one. The ocean whispered its eternal rhythm. And Diana thought about journeys, how sometimes you have to lose everything to find what really matters, how sometimes the only way home is through years of wandering, how sometimes love isn't enough, but love combined with growth, trust, and the courage to be vulnerable can create something miraculous. She'd spent 25 years building walls to protect herself. James had spent 25 years building an empire to fill the emptiness, and Ethan had spent 24 years wondering about the other half of his identity. Now they were whole. Not perfect, never perfect, but complete. A family built on truth, forgiveness, and the belief that it's never too late to start again. "What are you thinking?" James asked. "That I'd do it all again. Every mistake, every lonely year, every moment of doubt, because it led here. To you, to us, to this family." "Me too." He kissed the top of her head. "Though maybe next time we could skip some of the suffering and jump straight to the happy ending." "There is no next time. This is it. Our one miraculous chance. Then let's not waste a second of it." They didn't. They sat under the stars, talking about their foundation, about Ethan's future, about the trip to Europe they were planning, about growing old together. They made love later with the windows open, ocean breeze cooling their skin. They fell asleep tangled together, no space between them. And in the morning, they woke up and chose each other again. just like they would every morning for the rest of their lives. Because that's what second chances teach you. Love isn't about getting it right the first time. It's about being brave enough to try again and again and again, until finally, impossibly, miraculously, you get it right.